Hello, how are you today? I hope you're doing well. I'm doing fine myself. It's a bit of a rainy day, but I'm usually not troubled by the weather. So, let us go ahead and read a poem called Invictus. This poem, you could see it as a sort of tough guy's poem, if you believe such a thing exists. And the title, Invictus, comes from Latin and it means unconquered, or more generally, you can see it saying, I cannot be conquered, I cannot be beaten, I cannot be defeated by this or anything. So it's a very defiant poem standing up to circumstances that may be difficult to face. And if you want to imagine it taking place in some specific time, you can imagine it in pre Christian Rome, let's say 20 BC. That seems to fit some of the language in the poem, but in reality, it was written in 1875 by William Ernest Henley, and it doesn't really apply to any one specific time. Any time in which someone finds themselves in a very difficult situation and they want to stand up and say, I cannot be conquered. That's what this poem is about. So before I read the text of the poem itself, I think it's worth looking at some of the specific language that will help you understand it as we go ahead. So, pole to pole, you can imagine it means basically from one extreme situation to the other. Just as on our Earth, pole to pole could be from the North Pole to the South Pole. And more generally, it means everywhere, all around as far as we can see. Unconquerable, you should be able to break it down, right? Not, conquer, to defeat, able, could happen. If I'm unconquerable, I cannot be beaten. Fell is being used as an adjective in this poem. It's a bit old-fashioned. Fell means terrible, evil, or deadly. And we have a common expression in English still today, in one fell swoop. It means in one sudden, powerful, deadly strike. Right? Fell is terrible. To wince is to show pain or fear or distress. That would be a wince. Bludgeoning is beating, especially with like a club or a stick, a bludgeon, blunt instrument. To be bowed, you can imagine someone literally bowing their head, but to be bowed is to be surrendering, to submit, right? So the opposite, unbowed, means defiantly refusing to submit. I am unbowed. I cannot be forced to submit. Does that make sense? I hope so. Wrath. This is a somewhat common term, and it basically means extreme anger, or perhaps the things that are done in extreme anger. To loom, as a verb, basically means to represent a threat. If danger is looming, you can imagine it as like a presence hanging in the shadows, basically threatening, like something bad's going to happen soon. Hasn't happened yet, it's just looming over me as a constant threat. Okay? Straight, S-T-R-A-I-T, basically means narrow. So a straight gate would be a narrow gate to try to pass through, also implying something difficult to pass through. You can think of, on our Earth, the Strait of Gibraltar is an area of land where the water has to pass through this narrow space. The Mediterranean feeds into the Atlantic through this very narrow, hard to pass area, a strait. And from this, we might say he is in dire straits. That means someone who's, again, in a very difficult situation. I'm in straitened circumstances. Often people say that when they don't have much money, right? I'm in a situation that, again, is quite difficult. So straight, think narrow, difficult, okay? There's a line in the poem that says something about no matter how charged with punishments the scroll. I don't have good props, but we can imagine this is a scroll, a curled piece of paper, and you can imagine, someone, a warden or someone reading a charge of punishment to a criminal. The accused has been found guilty of the crime of blasphemy, and he is to be beaten with the whip 80 times and sent into the dungeon for 40 years. This would be a scroll that is heavily charged with punishments. Okay? So, again, this poem is not literally about a criminal facing punishment. It can include that. That's a symbol for you. But metaphorically, it represents any terrible circumstance where we just think, this is horrible, but I will rise up. I will not be defeated. I will defeat the circumstance. So, if that helps you understand it, let's go ahead and read it. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. So, I will ask you to share your reactions to this. Do you think that a poem such as this, or perhaps some song or other thing that you're familiar with, can help build up your courage and make you feel strong in the face of difficult situations? If so, please let me know about it. Meanwhile, have a good day until I see you for our next poem. Goodbye.